This time on Gasket Case Garage, we're going to start putting this rear end together. Let's do it. All right, so first things first, let's take a look at our kit. So we got the Yukon gear and axle performance drivetrain parts. So a couple things that we got, like I said, we're going to do all new hardware. This is the oil slinger. The oil slinger. And then we got this guy, which has got gear marking compound. It's got crush washers. We may or may not use the crush washers. It's got the bearings here for the axle or for the differential, and then these are for the pinion support. So first things first, we're going to have to punch in. This is the bearing for the pilot bearing for the pinion. We got some bolts in here. So pinion nut, and we've got the spider ring that we punched out in the first video. They give you 2 crush washers, probably because they know you're gonna screw one up. We can use them. There's a shim pack that's behind here, so we're gonna measure our old shim, and we'll see what we need out of here. So this is our kit, pretty much the whole thing. This is the seal. So it's pretty much everything you need to rebuild this rear end. Axle bearings, I need to take some measurement for the axle bearings and seals. We'll order those next. We got a gasket here for the 9-inch. I'm not going to use this gasket. I'm a big fan of the lube locker, which is a dry gasket. I like that. That's way better. So we'll order one of those so we'll have an extra gasket, you know, in case one rips here on Gasket Case Garage. So crush washers are fantastic, but if you really want to splurge a little, you can get these solid spacers with the shims. Measure the shims. That way when you take it off and, you know, when you're setting the drag on your pinion gear, which we're going to do in a couple minutes here, these are a little easier to take apart. So without further ado, let's start pressing in some races and pressing in some bearings, and we'll start slinging this thing back together. Okay, so we got our bearing punch kit here. So we want a size that will fit in here, but also fit on top. Well, 65 is 74 is too big. So 65 is basically what we got. But if you position it right, you will be able to get this in there. So let's oil this up and use some WD-40 on this. Get some in here. Get it nice and lubed up. All right, catch up with me on the press. All right, we're all set up here. All right, that's seated. All right, that's done. The other one's the same size, so basically flip it around to another one. A little bit of WD-40 on in there. All right, set that guy in there. Set that guy on here. And this nice and straight. All right, so we're back up here on the bench. Take this guy out. So now we're basically seated in here. And if you want to look down in there, you can see everything on that ridge is nicely seated. A nice even alignment there, back there. Everything's nice. Everything looks good. So the next thing is, let's look at the pinion gear. That's our next, that's this guy. Make sure I keep you in frame. So I made this little round collar on the lathe. Basically, when you press one of these on, this is the old bearing, you want it to sit right inside. You don't really want it to hit the outer cage. So I made this. I probably could have gone a little bit smaller, but that's a nice. You don't have a lathe. Let's see what socket. Let's see what socket would match up well. Give me 1 second. So if you don't have a lathe, I try not to beat on tools. If you don't have a lathe, a 1 1/4 socket is okay to use. Basically that fits right on the inside edge. There. So you could use that to press. But we'll use what we used for now. So in our kit, so as I said, this is the old bearing, so get rid of that. This was the bearing that goes on there, right like that. So we're going to stick this in there. We'll put it in the press, flip it upside down from its current position. We'll press that guy all the way down to the bottom. All right, so back to the press. All right, so we're pretty much set up. So because this ram takes a lot of abuse, I don't want to press any imperfections into the tip there. So I'm going to put a sacrificial piece of, I guess, 3/16 on top of there. And then press this down on in there. And we're in. Right there. All right, that part's done. Okay, so here we are. We've got this bearing pressed in here. Got that other bearing. This slides on into there. Okay, so slide this guy on. Let's get a little lube action on this one. All right, as luck would have it, as soon as I turned off the camera and pressed on it, it went in. So my methods on stuff is actually really simple a lot of the time. So I'm just gonna get behind the camera like I'm spooning it. This one is I call this 11 thousandths. Make sure they're not double stacked. So this one is 11. I'll stick that on there, and I'm going to get a pen. This is 11. Got a pen that doesn't write. Okay. 11 thou. That one's 11. This one's also 11. Are these all the same? This one seems thicker. This one is 15. This one's 15. We'll put this one down here. 15. This one is 10. Okay. That one's 10. 10 thou. This one is 15, 16, 17. 17. This one's 17. Okay, so the game plan on this is that we're going to put these spacers and these shims in between these two opposing bearings as they sit on here. And then we're going to put the pinion nut on here, torque it down to 200 foot-pounds, and then we're going to check the drag on the bearing with a dial, with one of these dial torque wrench in inch pounds. And so we looked at some paperwork from the manual, and we want to get to 12 to 20 inch pounds, so they're suggesting 0.483 on that. Okay, so step one is spoon the camera. So we measure this guy. What are we working with on this main spacer? This is 0.432. Okay, so 432 is here. We need to get to 0.483. Okay, so that is 51 thousandths. So with our spacers, we need to get as close to 51 thousandths as we can get. So that's going to be a 17. We'll put the largest ones on the bottom just to sort of help keep things straight. 17 and a 15, that'll be 32. 11 would be 43. And a 10 would be 53. So we're at 53. And then we drop this guy on top of there. And then we set this guy on top of this. It's a real tight fit. There we go. All right. Now, we don't know. So we won't put the oil slinger on here. We just want to measure drag on the bearing. So we're going to get this on here, get the pinion nut on here, And we're going to torque this, take it over to the vise and torque this to 200. Let's walk through this because I think this will help a lot of people. So currently, my previous reading was, you could probably, let me jump you back here for just a second. See down here, I wrote it down, 0.450, so the full thickness of the solid spacer plus the shim pack. So I had about 25 thousandths worth of shims, and it's about 425 thousandths. So at 450, I was at 45 inch-pounds, too much. I dropped it to 452, and I'm at 10 inch-pounds, too light. So it gives you a sense of how sensitive this is. So now I'm aiming for 451, which means I'm basically I've got an 11 in there and a 15. You see my system here, 17, 10, 11, 11, 15. Okay, so I'm going to take out the 11 and put in the 10. That should drop me to 451, and that should be right in between of 12 to 20 inch-pounds. I'm kind of hoping that it's on the lower end, but I don't know where it's going to land. So let's set that up. And just so you can see, I'm going to try to position you a little bit better. Okay. So if you could see my, nope, no, you can't see it. But as it's coming into focus, turn, I'm at 10 inch-pounds. I'm on the second large line. I'll rotate all the way back. You'll see it come around on the other side. One more time. Okay, so there we go. So we need to aim 1 thousandths difference. So let me pull this out, take out the 11, put in the 10. Okay, so let's look at this again. So we're at 451, and you can see it coming around. The drag is about 20. It's 15 to 20. Come back around. Pull it down. Just under 20. So the thing about this is I can't really get, with the shims that they've given me, I can't really get to a 0.5 thousandths. We're about 20. So that's in spec. So I'm going to take that. So I'm going to pull this off again, and then I'm going to put in the oil slinger. We'll put the seal on, and the pinion is done at this point. So, all right, so this is final assembly. I'm going to just take it at 450. I like to be precise. Definitely try to hot rod by the numbers, but there's a lot of factors. Let's stick this guy on. Get our inner bearing in there. Now we get our oil slinger. And our seal. To just press this guy in. Debating on using the press before I stitch this all together. Okay, let's just do that. I'm going to do it off camera. Things faster. All right, so here we are. We're back. Got the seal on. The oil slinger in there. So now we just got to get our yoke on one final time. All right, I'm going to put this in the vise and tighten it to 200 foot-pounds. All right, 200. 200 it is. All right, let's move back over. Put it in, take a final reading. Okay, so according to the field service manual for final assembly, we've got new bearings with a new installed seal bearings. Preload should now be between 17 and 32 inch-pounds for new pinion bearings and a new seal. That's what we got. We got a new seal that we pressed in, new everything, new bearings. Or at 25 inch-pounds. Come around slow. 25 inch-pounds. Go the other way. If I could zoom out. Zooming sucks on this. But we're at 25 inch-pounds. So we are within spec. Pinion is good to go. All right, that's about it for my batteries.